Hi everyone, it's Emily, and for today's very special video for my 10,000 subscriber milestone, I wanted to share the start of my journey of collecting for my favorite childhood systems, which are the Game Boy and Game Boy Advance. Before we get into that, I just again wanted to thank everyone who watches and interacts with my videos. I really can't put into words just how much this channel has meant to me this past year and how many great connections and interactions I've had with many of you. I just can't thank you all enough for how much support you've given me and this channel, and it just really, I think, elevated my joy when it comes to talking and sharing this hobby with you all. So I just really can't thank you all enough. So when it comes to this channel, I've really focused on modern day collecting for the most part. There are a few systems I was collecting for that I had missed out on previous generations, but I haven't gone back so far to start collecting for my favorite childhood systems. That includes the Game Boy Color here, as well as the Game Boy Advance. I've been really hesitant to actually dive into this for multiple reasons. As we all know, retro game collecting has become very difficult and many people are being priced out. And quite a few of my favorite childhood games have become quite expensive, especially if you want them complete in box. I've been thinking about this a lot this past year, about how I want to go about retro game collecting. And I decided that I do want to start this journey, but very slowly, with first picking up a few of my favorite childhood games that I just have a lot of nostalgic memories with. Now, there are plenty of ways to enjoy games nowadays, and you definitely don't have to buy them physically in order to enjoy them. But there's just something about physical game collecting that really can't be beat in my eyes. So I'm really excited to start this journey of collecting for these systems and sharing that journey with you all. Now, I've shared this in previous videos, but I don't have a ton of games from my childhood still because most of them were traded away or just got lost in time. But I'm really happy that I still have my original copy of The Legend of Zelda Oracle of Ages. And eventually I'd like to pick up the Oracle of Seasons game, which I know we had at one point, but it must have gotten traded in or sold at some point. And I actually did a little bit of digging at my parents' house and uncovered a few manuals from past games that my brother and I used to own. One of them being the manual for the Oracle of Ages. And it's really sad that most games nowadays don't have full color manuals. There's just something about flipping through these, especially before you start a game, to kind of learn about all the different systems and characters and just all the little details that they outlined in these little physical pamphlets. And so I'm really happy that I still have those. I don't know if I'll actually try to get the box because box games are quite expensive. And I think as I'm starting to rebuild my Game Boy collections, I'm going to mostly shoot for loose carts because that's just more feasible. And at the end of the day, I just really want these physical games to play. Another manual that I unearthed in some drawer was this one, and it's missing the cover, but this is the manual for Pokemon Silver, which I think was one of my first games I owned on the Game Boy Color. And it was definitely one of my top favorite ones because I definitely replayed that game multiple times. As a kid, I wasn't that into filling out the Pokédex at all. I was more into kind of picking and choosing which Pokemon will belong in my party of 6 to be a very well-rounded group with high stat builds. So that was what I was into as a kid. And to this day, this is still my favorite generation of Pokemon, which I feel like is probably the case for most people. The generation you start with is often the one that ends up being your favorite. So I only played Silver. I actually did not pick up Crystal, which I know goes for quite a bit nowadays. But just flipping through this, I just love all the different character portraits of you and your rival, as well as all the different trainers and things. But I do remember my first starter Pokemon ended up being Cyndaquil. So I definitely had a lot of save files with Cyndaquil as my starter. But my favorite Pokemon still to this day is Vulpix and Ninetales. So I often went with Totodile as my starter, just so that Vulpix and Ninetales could fill in as my fire Pokemon. The other game we had at the time was Pokemon Yellow, which I did find actually the full guide for, which was exciting. So I really want to pick up Pokemon Yellow at some point. So with Silver being my first exposure to the Pokemon game series, it was really cool going back to Yellow and experiencing Kanto through that lens. After exploring it in the post game in silver. I really loved how they had Pikachu follow you around in yellow. And it was just a really fun experience to play a new for me Pokemon game after playing just the heck out of silver. And I think as far as the pamphlets go, I think the Pokemon Yellow one turned out really nice. I do like kind of the more scrapbook approach they took. And it was cool also at the end of the pamphlet, they listed all 150 Pokemon. So you can, I guess, draw in here, or I don't know if there must have been sticker packs that people used to kind of fill in their Pokédex along with the game in this pamphlet, which I thought was a nice touch. And they didn't include that in the silver one. But yeah, Pokemon has been an interesting series. It's one I haven't dived too much into in the modern systems. I do own the games, but I just haven't committed to playing them yet. Someday I will, because I still enjoy Pokemon for what it is. And I'm curious about the newest one. And I've heard some pretty good things. I've just been waiting for the eventual patches to come out. But I went ahead, and the first Game Boy Color game that I decided to add to my personal physical collection is Pokemon Silver here. So it did take me a while to kind of look at all the different listings online to make sure I'm buying a legit copy that works. And I've been trying hard to just pick the physical games that have a really nice label on them. So this one has some light scratches, but overall I think it's in pretty good condition. And I'm still unsure how I want to display my Game Boy games, especially the loose cards. I actually pre-ordered an Analog Pocket finally, and I actually found a pretty cool 3D printed stand for the Analog Pocket on Etsy that I'm thinking of buying, even though who knows when my Analog Pocket will arrive. I did end up just pre-ordering from their website, so it might end up coming like in December or something. But regardless, I'm really excited to get that. I did think about modding one of my systems here, or buying a separate system to mod, but I kind of weighed the pros and cons of modding a system myself versus just buying the Analog Pocket. And I think the Analog Pocket is just a really good system to go with, and I really love the Game Boy Color design since this is my first console ever. So I did like how the Analog Pocket stuck with that design, even though it's not quite as comfortable perhaps as the horizontal form we saw with the advanced model. But yeah, I'm really happy to finally have silver in my possession again, and I do want to pick up yellow eventually. For the other cart-based Pokemon games, I might try to get like leaf green or fire red at some point, but they're quite pricey, and I just kind of want to stick at least to my childhood games first. And now finally, what's probably going to be pictured in this video's thumbnail, I did buy a complete in-box Game Boy Advance game, and it's from my favorite childhood game, and probably still my favorite game of all time. Though if you did catch my list of my 10 favorite games of all time, I would say my number 1 and number 2 spot still kind of switch around. But here it is, The Legend of Zelda: A Link to the Past, including the 4 swords. And when this came in the mail, I was just so overwhelmed with those nostalgic memories, and just so happy to have this game with me, and in really good condition. It's definitely not perfect by any means. I think there's a little bit of sun damage on the side here and a little bit of denting on the front cover, but once you stick one of these protectors on it, you really can't tell. So this copy did come with everything, including the game, of course, the cardboard insert, and the manuals. So I was flipping through the pamphlet here earlier, and just hit with such a wave of nostalgia. The opening cutscenes of the game, I'm a little fuzzy with the details, and I really am excited to replay this game. I don't know if I want to wait for the Analog Pocket to eventually arrive, or just play it on my original Game Boy Advance here. But I just really love how the opening cutscenes were echoed so well in A Link Between Worlds, which, as I mentioned on this channel, was the game that got me back into gaming all those years ago. It's really hard to, I guess, put everything into words of just what nostalgia really does for you, and just the joy of recollecting your childhood favorites. Of course, this didn't originally come out for the Game Boy Advance, but this was how I first experienced this game, so I really was happy to pick up this copy. And I do remember playing the 4 Swords game with my brother back in the day too, and I remember that being a lot of fun, even though I think because it was just the 2 of us, we had to use 2 of the bots to help us with the puzzles, but it was still a lot of fun. And not only did it come with the manual for the game. It also came with this guy, which is a big ad for a lot of the other games you could buy on the Game Boy Advance, including Fire Emblem here, which I really do want to pick up at least the cart for this game. And then we have Sword of Mana here, and I've never played any of the Mana games, though I've been really curious about them, and I've heard pretty good things, so I eventually do want to get into that series. And Final Fantasy Tactics, this is another game I think I want to pick up for the Game Boy Advance. I know there was the remake on the PSP, and I still think Square Enix is going to release some sort of HD remake. We'll see if that actually happens. And then Golden Sun and Golden Sun The Lost Age are two games I really want to play. I'm really happy that the first one is available on the Nintendo Switch Online, but I do think these are both games very worthy of picking up physically. And I feel like I missed out on so many classic JRPGs back in the day because mostly I just didn't know about them. I only played a handful here and there. And then we have Advance Wars 2 here, and I'm really excited for the Switch game that's going to be releasing very soon. So I may or may not try to pick up the Game Boy Advance version. And then Mario and Luigi Superstar Saga. I know this has a 3DS version that I was tempted to get, and this is another one that just got reintroduced on the Nintendo Switch Online. And then of course we have A Link to the Past here, and that's the last one they included. So I hope you guys enjoyed me sharing a bit of starting my journey and recollecting some of my favorite childhood games and systems. And I'm just so happy to finally have these games here with me again. It really, words can't describe the joy you feel when you pick up these games. You just have so much nostalgia for, and they still play great to this day. Again, I'm not sure how extensive I'm gonna go about collecting for the Game Boy and Game Boy Advance, but I do have quite a sizable list of games I do want to eventually pick up, slowly but surely. So let me know if you guys also have any fond memories when it comes to the Game Boy and Game Boy Advance, and if you still try to collect for some of your favorite childhood systems. But anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I'll continue sharing updates on the progress of these collections, and also my soon-to-be kind of game room shelf area that I'll soon be building very soon. So I'm really looking forward to that and starting to display some of my favorite things I've collected over the years. So until then, bye guys.